Thanks everyone for coming out. We have a great session today that is going to be led by the Tonal team. Tonal is the world's smartest at-home gym. And today they'll be talking about a suite of features that they've built on Databricks to drive better exercise outcomes for their customers. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kristi Korsberg and Giuseppe Barbalinardo. Hopefully I got that somewhere right. Awesome. Oh, I'm so sorry. Here you go.
Welcome. Thank you everybody for having us today. We're here to talk about empowering progress, building a personalized training goal ecosystem with Databricks. My name is Giuseppe Barbalinardo, with me Kristi Korsberg today. Here's the agenda for the day. We'll tell you who we are and a little bit about Tonal, the problem that we wanted to solve and how we approached Databricks to try to solve that problem, the solution we decided to implement, and some of the methods that we developed using Databricks. Finally, we'll go through the impact and some of the next steps that we want to implement in the future. But let's start with what is Tonal. Tonal is the most intelligent home gym that fits on your wall and allows you to train, allows you to do the best workout, receiving the best guidance, because it knows you and because it can personalize your journey. We embedded a lot of intelligence in Tonal, and the reason why we can embed that intelligence is because we have very advanced sensors, both embedded sensors, including our cable data that can measure every fraction of seconds, 50 times every second, how we move, the position, the velocity, and all the derived quantities, for example, the range of motion. We also can measure through IMU units, inertial units, accelerometer, gyroscopes. We can measure accelerations and angular velocity of our smart handles. We also can connect our phone to have a side view camera that allows us to receive the best guidance when we do movements. And with the Tonal 2 that we just released in January, we have now a smart view integrated camera that is able to collect more than 500 points every second. We also can connect all sort of third-party sensors like heart rate monitors, Polar, Apple Watch, Strava, L-Kit, and so on. And thanks to that, we were able to build the largest strength training data set in the world. I put here some data from 2024. We collected more than 280 billion pounds during the last year, about more than 1 billion sets performed, and overall more than 100 billion seconds of workout data. Multiply these seconds times 1,000 points every second and understand the size of our data set with hundreds of terabytes of motion and performance data. And thanks to these large data sets, we can really provide the best personalization to our members. For example, here on the right of this slide, I placed one of the guidance and feedback that we provide to our members that allow them to move through following better movement patterns, allow them to be more confident and do better movement. And as we know, when you learn how to move better, correctly, in a confined environment, in a controlled environment like a gym, movements are transferable, movement quality is transferable, and you're gonna move better doing your daily activity and achieve better longer-term goals. Now let's jump into the problem to solve and how we leverage Databricks to achieve this solution. And before telling you about the technical part, I want to tell you a little bit about the theory. And the theory is really rooted into how can we drive more engagement. And for us, engagement really means doing one more session, doing one more count, doing one more rep, one more second. And this means for our members, achieve better outcomes. Living a stronger life, a leaner life, a more confident, or overall a healthier life. For us, engagement is strongly correlated with real outcomes, whether it's aerobic, strength, deload, stretching, every session count. And on the left, we have the triggers, the tools, the touch points that we can use to drive engagement. For example, we can control our trainer experience. While you do the workout, we can show you the right metrics, we can show you the right guidance. The mobile experience after you do the workout, for example, you go drinking your protein shake, and you have the right metrics displayed to you. Hey, this is what you did during workout. Good job, you achieved your PR. The push notifications are very helpful because they allow us to get the attention of the user at the right time. For example, perfect to provide a feedback, a question, do you want to schedule a workout today? Which workout do you want to schedule? Which kind of session? Or yesterday you did a great workout, you can do a stretching or a reload session today. And last, emails. We don't know when people will open emails, but we know, for example, they're a good tool to provide after the workout some feedback on how we did. And now the punchline of this talk, which we'll try to answer, is it possible to hack motivation? Can we convince people to come in front of the machine or to do one more mobile session, for example? And the answer is yes. And along the way, we learned some opportunities that we had to develop a better technology. In particular, opportunities in content discoverability, user personalization, and data visualization. And we also found some technical complexities because, as you saw, our data set is highly multimodal. And thanks to Databricks, we were able to store this multimodal data in the most efficient way, as well as retrieve that. And moreover, as you know, having things real time complicates everything. So we'll see how we were able to deal with that. Let's go through the solution. And the solution is rooted into behavioral science. You may be aware of this theory called self-determination theory, which basically tells us that there are two kinds of motivation. Unhelpful motivation, also known as control motivation, or helpful motivation, autonomous motivation. Unhelpful motivation means that I don't see, for example, the point in doing workouts. I work out because somebody makes me work out, or myself, I force myself to do workout, otherwise I feel bad. This is control motivation, not very helpful. However, if we shift to the right and we start moving into autonomous motivation, identified motivation, I understand what are my goals, and I work to break them down, and I work to achieve smaller goals every week. This is a way to create motivation, and this is what we mean by hacking motivation. And we built several features around this theory. We wanted really to bring from theory to practice, to technology, this idea of habit formation. And we did that through 4 features. First of all, we want our users to set or update their goals. So we updated our preference center, and we revamped that. We also want our members to find the right activity to do to achieve their goals. And we needed to go back, get every single piece of content that we had generated till now, and tag that with the new goals. Next, members will need to, after they find the right goal, actually do the action, actually do the workout. And in the workout, we also improve the experience and added more workout metrics that you can follow and track. And finally, you want to be able, after you're done with the workout, to track your progress. How are you doing towards your goals? And then the weekends, you can compare your work with what you committed to. You can check if you achieve your goals or if you're not able to achieve your goals, and your goal needs to be adjusted. And we start from step 1. So this 4 steps rule is what we wanted to build for habit formation and to hack motivation. And these are the 8 goals that we built: muscle growth, weight loss, strength, performance, functional strength, endurance, movement quality, and consistency. It was a very iterative process. This is just a snapshot of the hundreds and hundreds of Slack messages between data science, our team, the performance and innovation team, who is a team of applied scientists that work with us, the product team, and of course, back end, front end. The reason why we needed to do a lot of iterations was because we needed to tag every single member, create embeddings, create vectors that describe motivation for every single of our members and every single piece of our content. So I'm pretty excited to pass it to Kristi, who will walk us through how we implemented these features using Databricks.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to walk through all of the methods that we deployed in order to stand up this training goals series of features. The first thing, as Giuseppe mentioned, that we wanted users to be able to do was set their goals in the Preference Center. So we established 2 different flows for users. The first was for new users. They can go in and establish their preferences with the onboarding flow. The second flow was for people that already existed, which was already hundreds of thousands of users at this time. And they were able to update their preferences either on the mobile app or on the trainer. And what you can see on the screen at the bottom is just the existing UI that we have that allows people to select up to three or four different options. And so the first thing that we learned after we enabled this was what people are trying to do on the machine. On the, I guess, your left-hand side of the screen, we have what we call the area of focus. So that's more of your top-line goal, your top-line preference. Most of our users are trying to grow their muscle mass, right? Hypertrophy. After you select your area of interest, you can select up to area of focus, you can select up to 2 areas of interest. And what we noticed with that, highlighted in green, is that functional strength or strength to kind of go about your day-to-day and be a little bit stronger for things like carrying groceries was really the most consistently popular thing across all of the areas of focus. And we were able to close some of the gaps in terms of left blank on the area of interest field, which I'm sure some of you noticed. Once we knew what people wanted to do, we had to tag all of our workouts in our workout library. And there's a lot of different ways that users can find relevant content. So we had to enable this and expose this information across a lot of different elements on the UI. First, users can select the training goals that are most aligned with their preferences with just basic filtering. So in this example, we have somebody who has selected muscle growth, endurance, and weight loss. The other thing that we do is with the content tags on our workouts, we can recommend different pieces of content just on the home screen, right? So you don't really have to filter if you don't want to. You can just select the workouts that are most relevant. And then after you've selected your workout of interest, we actually surface the strength or the magnitude of each of these training goals with what we call the workout details page. And so you can compare what your goals are to the magnitude of impact that we would expect that workout to have on your goals. And this was an iterative process. As Giuseppe mentioned, we worked with a lot of different team members. For this particular process, we initially partnered with the performance team. So the way that it would work is performance would conduct a lot of research so that we knew what movements would be associated with what goals, and we knew what types of sets or how people move would be associated with these goals. Once we got that research finished, we moved into more of the coding. So we kind of translated what performance explained to us into SQL, Python, right? And then we built out an algorithm to score and rank the effects of each of these goals, which is what you were able to see on the workout details page. And of course, we used Databricks to enable all of this workflow. So there were at least 5 Databricks elements that we had to leverage in order to stand this up. The feature from Databricks that wraps around the entire process is the workflows tool. We were able to set up cron jobs and just schedule the content tagging logic to run on a regular basis to regularly update our workout library or tag new workouts that come in. Within the workflows, we store all of our data inside of the Unity catalog, right? So that's where we're able to create the enrichments for our workouts and understand, what is prescribed for each workout. The notebooks element was where we did a lot of our development, and was also the tool by which we kind of flowed into workflows in order to make the jobs run regularly. And then we passed the data back and forth between the Databricks environment and our Tonal infrastructure with AWS S3. And you'll see this process come up in a couple of other flows as well, because this worked super well for us. And what do we know now about our content, right? So we see here the kind of prevalence of each of the different training goals across our workout library. At the time that we pulled this data, what you'll notice is that functional strength is the most prevalent of all of the goals that we have in our content library. And that's actually followed by endurance, which is sort of interesting because we saw that most people are most interested in muscle growth, right? So this type of information also lets us understand, well, maybe we need to build more muscle growth content since that's what a lot of people are super interested in. Okay, tracking progress. So tracking progress comes in a couple of different flavors. The first piece that we enabled was what we call accumulations. So after each workout and at the end of each week, we want users to know how much of a given goal they have, quote, accumulated, right? How much effort did they do across the week that we can then attribute to their goal of interest? And so what you can see here is that we have this information available as historical performance, right? The green bar in the middle, labeled as A, is the metric accumulation that we store for users for the current week. And we also showcase that information for them for the past 4 to 8 weeks. We are setting weekly targets, which is what users can compare their accumulations to, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So how did we figure out how to accumulate a certain amount of effort or a particular movement to a specific training goal? This is a very similar process to content tagging. So now performance, rather than looking at a workout prescription, might look at how users move when they're doing a workout. And they'll say, if so-and-so lifted X% of their 1 rep max, we're actually going to tag that to the strength training goal as an example. So we would take that explanation, we would translate it into code, and then again, we would build out an algorithm so that every single workout activity that we have in our database was had training goal efforts kind of tagged to it. And this deployment was actually very different than content tagging. So users do workouts, all the time, and we wanted to be able to showcase the accumulation right after somebody completed their workout. And so the problem that we had to solve with this was actually a bit more of a streaming problem. And so what we have here is the Tonal infrastructure, right? A workout ends, and then we pass all of the workout activity information. We collect it all in Kafka microbatches, right? And then we pass that information to our Databricks environment, right? It's important to pass the workout activity over to Databricks because we need a lot of enrichment data that's only available in the Databricks environment in order to understand if somebody is doing a strength set or an endurance set, or if they're just, doing a muscle growth activity. And so pass the information to Databricks, enrich it with all the information that we already have stored there, and then send the enriched information back through Kafka and expose it into our mobile app and general Tonal infrastructure so that users can understand how much of any given workout they accumulated for that after that workout. Okay. For this, we spent a lot of time on the phone with our Databricks reps to understand how to make more performant joins. One of the tools that we used for this was query planning. So we were able to, again, set up more performant joins by looking at all of the different kind of planned architecture as well as realized architecture, and leveraged caching and reduced shuffles so that we could have faster data merges and reduce the compute time. We had to get the workout accumulations available to users in a matter of seconds. So evaluating every step of this process was really critical. And what do we see now as users? Hopefully they see just super basic numbers, even though there was a lot under the hood. In this particular example, what you'll notice is we plotted the number of strength and endurance sets for just one random user, and for the first year of their time at Tonal. So this particular example, the user did between about 2 and 5 strength sets every week, and then between 5 and 9 endurance sets. So a very interpretable sort of final integer after lots of computations. Okay, so we know what users want to do. We know which content to surface to them in order to help them achieve their goals. We also know how much effort they're putting towards their goals every week. The final thing that we really had to do was provide a recommendation for how much to accumulate for every week for their goals of interest. And so we call this weekly targets. And weekly targets are set at the beginning of each week, so you can log in on Mondays and understand how much Tonal would recommend that you lift for any given week. It's visualized in the mobile app with a pretty classical kind of workout ring structure, where the dark gray bars will represent Tonal's recommendation for how much you should lift for a given goal. In this particular example, muscle growth is measured by volume, so just pounds lifted. And so we are recommending for this user 42,000 pounds for a given week. So this person's using Tonal pretty regularly. Targets were developed a little bit differently than content labeling, workout accumulations, and of course the preference center. This was actually the only piece of the project where we had to do any kind of forecasting, predictions into the future, that type of thing. And so what we did with this was we leveraged MLflow, and we ingested a lot of different information about historical user behavior. And then we created low and high bounds based on recommendations from our performance team. So we built out this model, and then we did have to do a little bit of manual adjusting. What we found was that for people that were super lowly engaged, we were actually getting recommendations, do half a strength set, do 1.75 endurance sets, kind of nonsensical, very small values. So we adjusted those small values and created ranges that were a little bit more progress-oriented, if you will, forward-thinking, to get final results for people. And this one, very similar structure, I would say, to the content tagging effort that we did. So in order to get the weekly targets stood up, we used all of the data available in our Unity catalog, and then we actually run 3 separate jobs on top of it with 3 different notebook flows. One job runs just on Sunday nights. That's our standard job, and that will give us scores for all of the users in our user base for every Sunday. Of course, people work out after we run that job, so we run what we call like a catch-up script the following early morning, just to grab anybody who maybe did a workout after the job ran. And then those scores get updated as well. And then finally, for any users that start with Tonal in the middle of the week, we don't force them to wait until the Sunday to get their weekly targets. So we run a regularly recurring job for new users so that they can have recommendations right when they get started with Tonal. As with the other processes here, we land all of that information in S3 before exposing it to the Tonal infrastructure and ultimately back into the Unity catalog again. And each one of these jobs is monitored. So we have all of the jobs set up inside of Databricks, and You can go into the UI and just make sure that they're all running as scheduled. You can obviously, for any of you who have used workflows, you can click in and sort of see how long the job took, if there were any issues. You can debug super easily. So look at this screen probably way more than I should. Okay, impact. Oh, before we get into how this affected our users, if I click this, will it play? No. Okay. We have a video that walks through the entire user experience. So of course, this was about 4 different features for the engineering team to deploy, but for the user, it's just one experience, right? So first they go in and they select their goals, as I described. We've got a typical muscle growth user. I think this person picks endurance and weight loss. Yes. So now they've selected their preferences. Now we're going to take them to some workouts that we might recommend based on those preferences, right? And they can also select to look at different workouts, of course, based on the content tags that we have. So we've got these workouts. We're going to click in now and just take a look quickly at like the magnitude of effect, right, that we might expect to see for any one of these workouts and kind of how well Tonal did in terms of surfacing the information to me. So I see muscle growth, weight loss, endurance, all with very high effects. And the last thing I want to do is check my progress. So have I met my goals for the current week? How has my previous and historical performance sort of trended over time? It's all available to you in one kind of enclosed ecosystem here. And I think that's it. Great. So thinking back to the motivation and kind of our purpose behind this to really get people back on the trainer, to be excited to work out, right? We wanted to understand if this changed any user behavior. So the first thing that we looked at was what we call weekly target completion. So this is going to measure the % of users that close their rings or achieve their goals for any given week. And we did a pre-post analysis for this, and we had 4 different cohorts. So we had what we'll call sort of a baseline cohort. We have pre-post period for people who never interacted with this feature on the trainer, on the mobile app. Then we go and we look at, of the people who did engage with the feature, we see people who interact with it a very minimal amount, maybe just once. We call those the only viewed cohort. And then we have the low and high frequency users as well. And as you can see in the bar chart, basically engagement with the feature is correlated with closing your rings and working out more, right? So all of those signs sort of indicate to us, okay, great, we're kind of working towards achieving our own goals of helping people kind of self-motivate with this progress tracking tool. The other thing that we always like to check is workout activity. You know, we want people on the machine, we want people to be using it on a regular basis. And the trends that we see looking at this outcome metric are very, very similar to what we saw with % of users achieving their weekly targets. And lucky for us, we also stood up a dashboard. And so now we can monitor all of those metrics, not just in a pre-post fashion, but we can monitor them just generally, right, week over week. So this is more of a standardized dashboard view. What we have a series of metrics for different features called efficacy metrics. Of course, for training goals, the efficacy metric here is the % of users that meet their weekly targets. We've also established the very similar cohorting approach as was described on the prior page. So we have people that don't use the feature at all. We have people that interacted with it just once in the given week. And then we have the medium and high engagement, so people using it more or less than the median number of times. And this chart shows a very similar sort of trend as the last chart did, where we have high engagement being correlated with the outcome metric that we're trying to drive. And you might notice the spike in blue for the people that don't engage. It's a blip, but we always release a big, we do a big marketing push in January associated with New Year's resolutions. So our 0 engagement users do see a spike there, but still much lower than the others. Okay. So in sum, Databricks really was our centralized solution to enable all of this. You all saw that we referenced the Unity catalog for our data enrichments and our data storage. For a lot of the components of this feature, we used workflows to schedule our cron jobs. We used autoloader and ML flow for different components to help us efficiently process data and to register any models that we create into a library. And then Notebooks was really the engine for developing code and maintaining all of the jobs. And then, of course, finally, we have the dashboards, which lets us visualize our progress and make sure that we are developing features that actually make an impact for our member base. So what are our next steps? There's a lot of ways and a lot of places that we could go with this. Right now, we calculate training goal accumulations and weekly targets based on the type of workouts that users complete, right? You could imagine in the future us leveraging some of our newly released features like the computer vision feature to calculate these metrics more on how users move, right? Understanding a little bit more range of motion or poor or good or bad form. The other thing that we do right now is offer content recommendations based on the preferences that users select. One very impactful way that we could change this is by offering recommendations to users that would just let them achieve their weekly target, right? Like you have 10,000 pounds left to meet your muscle growth goal. You should do this workout because we think you'll get 10,000 pounds out of it. That requires us estimating the amount of training effect goals quantitatively on each of our content pieces of content. So definitely a bit more work to do there. And then the last thing, Giuseppe mentioned we have 8 training goals. We actually only have a suite of metrics for 7 of them. So we have 1 that's missing. And of course, we would like to get values for that one as well. So Giuseppe and I are the 2 on the stage here today, but I think there's about 24 faces on this page. It was an enormous group effort across a lot of different teams: engineering, data science, product, user research, performance. So it really took a lot of different folks to enable, test, envision, evaluate what this feature looked like. And some of them are even here in the room today. So thank you guys so much for your attention. We actually do have a Tonal set up in the main building for Moscone. Yeah, it's in Hall F, and we've got a couple of folks there from our retail team to sort of help you with demos if that's of interest, and we're really excited to have been able to kind of hack our way through motivation.